So Joel Klatt, former Colorado football stud, Colorado kid, we were both lamenting when Denver got eliminated by Minnesota. Boston sort of probably breathed a sigh of relief.
Yeah, I mean, like Boston won the title that night.
Yeah, the matchups.
Little did anyone know.
Yeah, Dallas doesn't have enough defense because Luka's a liability, and so's Kyrie, and Minnesota didn't have the offense.
That's right.
So basically, Boston has benefited greatly from Denver getting knocked out, and Denver's still the favorite for next year. But it is interesting. I watched this. It's a non-college football topic, but something you know a lot about because you know the industry. People, because the NBA, every call's like pass interference. It's all subjective.
It's all subjective.
Everybody thinks the league is rigged. I can assure you, Boston got every late call last night.
Which is exactly the opposite what the league or ESPN wanted.
It was their nightmare scenario.
Of course.
Every go-either-way call went to the team leading 2-0 in the series. Networks hemorrhage money on sweeps.
That's right.
They hemorrhage money. And league, by the way, they want the games to go longer. They want more discussion about their league.
Of course. Every single, like in baseball or the NFL, peek behind the curtain, the networks sell as if the series is going to go 6 games. Yeah. So any series that goes fewer than 6 games, the network loses money, and they have to do what's called a make good on different programming, wherever it is, on all of those sales items. So every call that went Boston's way last night, everyone in the league and at ESPN was like, no.
When I worked at the other place, it was palpable the tension if a series was going to be a sweep. You could sense it in the building. It was like, not good. No, Boston is bad for business. I
mean, listen.
They're 15-2 in the playoffs.
I'll say it. I sense it around here every fall during the World Series. That's all I'm rooting for, everybody. By the way, I'm rooting for 7.
Yeah, fans think you're rooting for a team. Fox, ESPN, NBC.
We're rooting for 7. That's it. That's all we're rooting for.
Everybody gets their bonuses.
That's right.
When it gets to 7. So you recently interviewed Steve Sarkisian. Let's play a moment of this interview as you've interviewed the notable coaches around the league.
Of all the stuff that's happening, how good can our culture be in this building, right? Whether it's the players, whether it's the support staff, whether it's the coaching staff, whether it's the administration. Is everybody on the same accord? Is everybody talking the same language? Is everybody working together? Do we have a healthy environment that people want to come in here every day?
Yeah. I have always thought this is the most appealing national program in the country. Uniforms, city, gravitas. I think Texas football feels gigantic. The problem is that everybody in Texas knows it's gigantic, and it can be a little high maintenance behind the scenes.
I think that's absolutely fair. I think for the ever since Mac Brown started to remember, they went to the national championship game and lost with Colt McCoy getting injured in that game to Alabama. Nick Saban's first title at Alabama. From that point until last year, way too many cooks in the kitchen at Texas. Yep. Every booster wanted their way.
And they've got rich boosters.
And they've got a lot of influential people. And I give the Texas administration a lot of credit. Chris Del Conte is their athletic director. They allowed Steve Sarkisian to come in and build his program. And that hasn't really been the case over that last period of time, 14, 15 years at Texas. And Steve's done a remarkable job. And I think what you heard in that answer is why they're starting to have success, and that's because they have an internal standard, and they don't allow themselves to be defined by outside entities. And I think that's, by the way, a real epidemic across our culture. I think that we as a culture or individuals or an organization can allow people to define us, and then we allow those expectations to be heaped onto our shoulders, and we try to measure up to what others think we should be. And I think the most successful people, whether it's individuals or organizations in life, internally define what they are, who they are, and how they're going to have success. And that's what Texas feels like to me. When I go down there, like I did this offseason, covered them last year, we'll cover them again week 2 as they travel to Michigan to face the defending national champions. When I'm around Steve Sarkisian, he's very comfortable in his own skin because he defines himself and sets his own standards for him as an individual and for their program. And I think that's what's so valuable about what he's doing right now.
Now a program that doesn't have that big feel It got a little into itself. Colorado and Deion got a little into themselves last year. Shador and Deion. And
let me pose you a question.
A lot of noise.
Let me pose you a question about Colorado.
Oh, God.
Did Deion change at all from the day he was hired until today? Or did the outside expectations change based on the way that the season started? Basically I'm saying, did you change or did Deion change? You telling me all of a sudden he got full of himself? Really? Was that the case? Or is what you expected of him and his program different based on the way that they started the season?
Well, when you talk the game, I want to see you walk the game, and it felt like they were a little better at the PR than the football by the end of the season.
Okay, was a 400% increase in wins better?
Well,
they were a one-win team and totally irrelevant.
Yeah,
I think people forget about that. It's not like he took over some juggernaut.
But it is the NIL era. You should be able to improve pretty quickly.
Yeah, and they did, 400%. I don't know. Did you not hear what I just said?
I wasn't good at math.
400%. You know, a +3 in the win column, 4 wins from 1. It was a success. Now, did they fall short of even their own expectations? Yes. And he would have said that, and I thought that they let some games go that they should have won, and Stanford being one of them, and probably Oregon State being another. And now all of a sudden you're talking about a team that they feel like probably should have been a bowl team and fell short of that. I would pose you this question. I have been accused of being a homer and an apologist for Colorado.
Not this journalist.
However, Shador, the quarterback, Deion's son, was sacked over 50 times last year. Mm-hmm. It was the clear weakness on a team that was very competitive if they protected the quarterback.
Yeah, they were bad up front.
They have totally rebuilt their offensive line through the transfer portal, mainly, and getting Jordan Seaton, the #1 rated offensive tackle in the recruiting cycle last year. I'm just going to throw out a hypothetical. If they can now go from giving up over 50 sacks to giving up somewhere in the high 20s, which is still a lot. I'm not saying that they're the most dominant offensive line in college football. I'm saying that they're middle of the pack, average, high 20s in terms of sacks. Tell me where their win total goes in a schedule that's going to be far more easy, I would argue, than it was a year ago. You see, this is why I say, there's a path to 8 or 9 wins. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? Well,
look at their schedule.
Just look at it for a moment and think to yourself of the growth of the offensive line, what they are if he is upright in the pocket with the skill position players they have on the outside, and the schedule that they face. Far more difficult early than it is throughout the entirety of the schedule. It is not impossible, and I think that probably likely that Colorado wins at least 8 games, maybe more.
What I want to pivot to all these Pac-12 schools going to the Big Ten. So the Big Ten is feeling themselves now because Michigan won the Natty. Now, the previous 15 years, they got pushed around mostly by the SEC, but they're feeling themselves. But now Jim Harbaugh left, and so did 20 players, and a lot of senior leaders and old. I mean, it's not
Michigan. You're saying
specifically. I mean, they lost they lost
everybody.
I mean, these were redshirt senior. I mean,
not everybody. I shouldn't say everybody. They lost a lot of influential
players. Here's where the Big Ten flyover country is going to have to listen to Uncle Colin, who grew up on the West Coast.
Let's see. What do we got?
Oregon is going to beat Ohio State and Eugene.
Are they?
It's going to be Ohio State's only loss on the year. They're going to go on to win the national championship.
Wow.
So I'm calling it. But I think the Big Ten.
These are big pronouncements in the summer.
Yeah. A lot of these Big Ten fans think, they can't play this physical football. I would argue, at least this year, because of the Michigan regression, new staff, new players, Michigan's going to pull back. That the best team will be Ohio State, though they'll lose at Oregon. And then the next 2 to 3 best teams will be from the West Coast. And it will be an invasion of aerial excellence, and they'll be a little on their heels.
You're trying so hard to not say USC. Like you're all in on USC.
I think
now.
Jed Fish, very clever offensively.
So Washington. You think
I think
Washington?
Lincoln Riley, very
clever. Washington lost more as far as impactful players than even Michigan did.
I'm just going to say, keep your eye on Oregon beating Ohio State. USC very clever. Now Lincoln gets his offense back a little bit.
Let me pose this idea for you, and I think that everyone has to wrap their arms around this. In the new era that we'll be going into this year with the 12-team playoff.
Yes,
these non-conference games are going to be massive, in particular against teams that you would suspect or expect to be in a similar position within their league in the SEC and the Big Ten. And that's what we have with LSU and USC.
Yeah.
And they play each other. And so the winner of that game is going to feel like they have an opportunity to go and finish in third or second in their conference, because I don't think either of them will win their conference with some of the strength that we have on the top end. But if USC wins that game against LSU, they've got to think to themselves, okay, we can go be a playoff team.
USC got a total break. No Oregon, no Ohio State, Michigan in a total rebuild, and LSU, as bad defensively as they've ever been, losing Jaden Daniels.
In Las Vegas, which got to feel like a good break.
You cannot get a bigger break than USC got in their first-year schedule.
Okay, so I'm with you, right?
I'm more bullish. 10 games, clever, really good skill people. Everybody's talking about West Coast people can't handle a few snowflakes. I'm saying Midwest people, welcome to the brain power and offensive symmetry of the West Coast.
Well, I mean, we will see. And then to echo your point about Oregon.
That is big. That
Oregon
roster
is really good.
Really good.
Yeah, they
are good quarterbacks.
They are really good. I think that there are 4 teams in the country that are clearly right now better than everybody else, at least now, sitting here in the summer in the
Texas,
off-season.
Ohio State, Georgia.
Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, and Oregon.
Yep.
The Oregon Ducks. Those 4 teams are going to be in the top 4.
By the way, I saw you were a little shy when I said Oregon's beating Ohio State. You're on that game.
I'm not.
Well, that's stupid.
I believe that is one of our network partners that have that game.
Well, we'll have to get rid of them.
Let
me tell you something. Oregon, I know Ohio State has a hard time believing this. Oregon's NIL, they buy 5-star guys too.
Well, of course they do. And I love Dan Lanning and what he's built there. And I've said this publicly, and I've said it on our Big Noon conversation. I went up to Eugene. Dan actually, I was around the team for a couple of days, spoke to them, and then interviewed Dan. And I said it right to his face, and he got sheepish and his face turned red. But I was like, listen, if there is a young coach, okay, so remember, this is only going to be his 3rd year as a head coach. If there's a young coach in America that I could buy stock in, it would be Dan Lanning.
Yeah, he's good. Surprised me. I didn't think a Georgia kid, I didn't think a Southern kid would come up here and fit so seamlessly.
Not only that, but he really loves it. You don't think he had an opportunity to at least peek at that Alabama job? And he said, you know what? No, I'm good here. And he really loves Eugene, and more importantly, his family loves Eugene.
Yeah.
And he's got young kids, and he said to himself, I'm good. And this is the most important part. We're actually sitting there playing golf together, and he says, and I know I can do it here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, there we go. So he's seen it. He was at Georgia and won a national championship as an assistant coach. He knows what it takes. He knows the players and what they should look like. He knows what the culture should look like. He understands the backing. That's exactly right. He understands the financial backing that it takes. And even he knows, like, we can do it here. And this team is going to have a real chance. I think Oregon's going to have a real chance not only to win the Big Ten, but to compete for and potentially win the national championship.
Yeah. No, I'm excited for it. So you got Sark, Deion Sanders, Matt Rule, Ryan Day, Kalen DeBoer, James Franklin, Dan Lanning. I am usually a believer. Like when Howard Stern leaves FM radio, don't take the job. Take the job from the guy that replaced him.
The Bama situation.
Like when I retire, the poor schmuck that takes over for me is done.
Well, I've already worked it into my contract, and we're going to just go to the moon. No, I'm kidding. I've not worked anything like that in.
I think the person that replaces the legend's toast. I think Kalen DeBoer could be a little bumpy this year. I think he is in a short list of the best coach in the country.
No, I agree. And okay, so there is something to this idea. I keep thinking about. I was actually sitting up. I'm a golf nut, right? Yeah. And so I'll watch things, and in particular anything Tiger Woods that comes on the TV. I'm just in. Yeah. It's Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Muhammad Ali, any of these guys. I'm like, yes, I want to watch documentary shows, whatever it is. And the show comes on about Tiger, and he was talking about, and his child sports psychologist was talking about the importance not of his technical ability as a kid, but that he learned how to win. And he won everything as a kid, and how that's what translated, and how you see a lot of these, in particular, golf phenoms as kids. Well, the phenom aspect is their technical ability, but they don't know how to win. This is why Adam Scott or Michelle Wie or some of these people that were can't-miss prospects never actually materialized into what we wanted to see out of them, because why, Colin? They didn't know exactly how to win. They knew how to technically play the sport.
And DeBoer wins everywhere.
DeBoer has won everywhere, and that's
Brian
I'm
Kelly
watching
at Notre Dame. He wins everywhere.
And so I'm watching this documentary, and that's all I can think about. Is I was like, oh, this is Kalen DeBoer. He's 104-12 as a head coach, going back to Sioux Falls and then Fresno State and now at Washington. And so, yes, if you're going to have a guy that takes over for arguably, and I would admit this, the absolute greatest college football coach of all time, who would you have do it? A guy that just wins. And so that's Kalen DeBoer, and I think that mindset and that skill hopefully translates for him and for the Alabama faithful. I will say this, though. It's just so unique. We don't see it. The last time that a coach left a program, whether it was to take another job or retire, at the top, and then they hired someone from outside to take his spot, I'm going back in my mind. I was like, it's got to be Dennis Erickson taking over for Jimmy Johnson at Miami.
He won a title with Jimmy's guys.
And he won a title with Jimmy's guys, which then made me start to think more about, okay, can Kalen do that? Absolutely. What do you think he just did with Washington?
Yeah.
The majority of those players
were Chris Peterson.
Roma Dunze, all these, they were Chris Peterson's players. Now, did he add to that with a guy he had coached when he was a coordinator at Indiana with Michael Penix? Yes, and he will add, and he's doing that, recruiting very well at Alabama. I'm starting to become bullish for Kalen DeBoer in Alabama. The risk becomes, here's the risk, for a place that has been the alpha in the sport. They have been the standard. By the way, Kirby Smart, he's like 50-4 in his last 54 games, 1-3 against Alabama. 3 of the 4 losses have been Alabama. So as much as Georgia has run the sport and won 2 national championships, he never really solved Nick Saban in Alabama. Yeah. You could say that Alabama is still the standard. Well, they're the standard now, and in this transition, they will be at risk because 2 of the 4 best teams in the country are in their conference, Texas and Georgia. They have the resources, they have the coaches, and they have the athletes to put aside Alabama. And that's the challenge for Kalen DeBoer, is to maintain his presence, and more specifically the program's presence, as the preeminent program not only in the South but in the country.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.